if I were to boil it down to just a handful of things for the corporates, the innovation side of things, it is the risk taking is definitely one of those. To your point, seek forgiveness, not permission. Like, you'll rarely get fired, but moving fast as well. Like, moving fast, test things. Like, you can apply those lean startup principles even to a larger organization. And the Venn diagram, which maybe we can show this on screen if people are watching the video, because hearing me talk about it,
and we'll link in the show notes. Actually, I've got it on your Instagram. Like, it's great.
Oh, you can see it. Amazing.
Oh, I can see it. Why don't you visually describe it? Because there's 3 of my favorite words there, and then there's a surprise.
Amazing. Oh, okay. So we have a lucky dip in your favorites. Okay, absolutely. I'd love to. So if we start with the top left-hand side, it doesn't really matter, but just for the visual, right? The first circle, we've got accountability. Now, this very nicely links back to what I was saying before with the difference between being an actual victim and legitimizing if something has happened to you versus assuming victimhood. So this is part of, like, take accountability, because, empowerment is such a trendy buzzword at the moment. And I cannot stand when these buzzwords just lose their meaning and these words just get thrown about. And empowering is one of them. When you're accountable, I genuinely believe that is an empowering act, because you are taking back the power by being accountable. So that's the first thing. You've got accountability. I'm going to go actually I'll go clockwise. I'll save the best till last. So we've got accountability. The next big overlapping circle is vision, is having that clarity of vision. So I talked a lot before about success, defining success on your terms. What does it mean to you? So part of that is having that clear vision. Like, what even is it? How do we know that we've achieved success or that we've been lucky when we didn't even define that in the first place? The overlap between the vision and the accountability is the proactivity, because when you've got that clarity of vision and you're accountable, you're empowered, that generates that kind of proactive attitude that you need to go out there and make it happen.
Pushes others, but like the point is you're moving. Yeah.
You're moving. And one of the classic quotes that's thrown around as it relates to luck is, I'm sure you've heard this before, Ian, many, many times, but is when hard work plus opportunity meet, that equals luck. No, we're going a step further here. So that proactivity is going out there and seeking out those opportunities. There are opportunities all around. You proactively going out there and getting them is a key element to that. What that links to is kind of an abundance mindset and positivity. And so there has to be this deep belief that these opportunities even exist in the first place. I'm sure we all know people who have a bit of the victim mentality, who are maybe a bit more pessimistic. And there's this great visual that made the rounds of 2 people sat on a bus, and one side they're looking out the window and it's all sunny, and they're on the other side, they're looking at the dark, facing against the cliff. It's the same bus that you're on, but it's which direction you're looking. So knowing that there's opportunities around you, to be able to be proactive with that, the gratitude as part of that as well, to energize yourself and be grateful in that perspective. And then the final big circle that I'm leaving till last, and I really want to know which ones are your favorite and your surprise one.
I'll tell you, but this is good, because this one's actually not going to surprise people, except for maybe how it intersects with things. So go ahead.
Okay. So it's the risk tolerance.
Yeah.
And so overlaps here with a few of these others, the proactivity, the vision, the going out there. Part of that is the risk taking. And another one of these famous quotes related to luck is, the harder I work, you got the effort element, the harder I work, the luckier I get. It's not true necessarily, not wholly. It's, yes, you do need to put in the hard work, but also how much risk are you taking? Because those risk takers are precisely the individuals who get called lucky when they turn around. You're not going to be called lucky if you haven't even taken those risks in the first place. Lastly, the overlap with that and linked to the risk is the resilience that you need to keep going. So we're not talking about the windows of time that we're applying to these certain things, right? And this is where it can fall into that trap of toxic positivity around like New Year's goals and how far are we through the year and goal setting, because we don't get a say on those external forces. I mean, that is the
Right.
reality. I'm not going from woo-woo land. And part of that is, yes, we can be accountable, have a clear vision, be proactive, be grateful, blah, 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 everything I've run through. But the reality is we have zero control of those external forces, those external decision makers. And so the resilience required to keep going for long enough to then get called lucky is a non-negotiable prerequisite as part of this hacking luck four-leaf
Well,
clover Venn diagram.
this is such a cool framework. And look, so much of our audience listens in audio only. I'm glad you took the time to describe it. But folks, like, look at the show notes, go online, look at this diagram, because it is actually really cool. And Stephanie, genuinely, I love this, right?
Thank you.
Like, accountability, vision, positivity, and risk as ingredient attributes that let you hack luck. But what I love about this is that what you've identified in the intersections, right? You called this out, but I'm going to do it again.
Yeah.
Like, positivity or optimism plus risk taking gives you resilience, and you have to have resilience to learn to control your own destiny. And I love that. Like, I reflect on this and I'm like, what are some of the things that I love about some of the big startup and tech startup centers of the world, whether it's the Bay Area, whether it's London, whether it's Singapore. There's something I refer to as techno optimism, but it's generally, there's a positive view, right? We're all on the same train, whether we're talking or bus or whatever, whether we're talking about AI, whether we're talking about sociology, et cetera. And if you have this view that you're willing to take risks but you believe that you're going to learn your way to a better outcome, you can do anything. So I love that.
Thank you. I'm dying to know, what was your surprise one?
Well, the surprise one for me, and it's really interesting. The surprise was accountability.
Where I started. Okay.
And I absolutely love this. Like, vision, like, okay, this is going to sound dismissive. I don't mean it to be, like, of course, like, you got to have some vision of what the world could be, right? I think a lot of people underappreciate the positivity. I think everybody who has even thought about entrepreneurship, whether they practice it or not, is going to be like, well, of course you take risks. And I want to come back to that, by the way, because that's a really hard one to practice. But accountability gets overlooked. And it actually reminds me of a moment in my career, some time ago, a decade ago. I was a little more junior in my career, but like, long story, very, very short. I failed to take accountability for a big mistake when I should have. I was working at a large company. My boss rightly chewed me out. She was quite pissed. And then I went and I read a book called Extreme Ownership, which is actually a wonderful book. Have you read this?
No, I recently had it recommended, so it's funny hearing it again. Yeah,
it's great. I mean, it's set in Navy. It's from the Navy SEALs in Iraq. It's a very kind of military centric series of stories, but it really does actually just boil down to one lesson that you articulated also so well. By taking accountability, you take control of your own destiny. In so many ways. You give people confidence in you, you give yourself confidence, you learn the lessons, et cetera. You talked about it helps you take back the power. I've never thought about that in the concept of entrepreneurship here. And with the idea that if you're taking accountability and you're taking risk, you're able to demonstrate a commitment that brings people along. So I don't know. I'm not gonna kind of drown the podcast with more exposition on this. But I love this. I would encourage people to look at this as a framework. But hang on now. Let's talk about applying this, because let's be honest. So many people who are trying to drive change, innovation, positive outcomes exist in a context of a large organization. They're not entrepreneurs. Their professional life is they have a job, they have a boss, they have incentives.
Yeah.
You can try and take all the accountability you want, but you can't really take accountability for things way outside of your control. You'll actually, in my mind, you'll actually go insane if you try and do that. I've seen people do it. Risk, you can take risk, but like sometimes if you take a risk and it doesn't pan out, you get fired. So how do you action this?
Yeah,
like how do you take this Venn diagram and apply it to your own life?
Yeah, great question. I love that. So what I would posit is maybe use this framework as a self-assessment. Like go through this and score out of 10%, whatever your style is, and score yourself on kind of what's the clearest to you, what resonates the most with you, what's the most meaningful. And I think if we take that example of, okay, somebody in a corporate environment, as always, wherever you are, there are things outside of your control. With the vision piece, I think, depending on what that vision is, I think the higher some of those pots are, the more they should lift the others. So I think if we take a vision one, for example, that's the yellow circle, then the risk, it's kind of risk versus reward. If that vision is so meaningful to you, then you kind of give yourself that permission. You kind of owe it to yourself almost to dial up that risk tolerance. Now, if we take your extreme example of like, okay, I've got a project, I'm in the corporate environment, and I'm just like not getting through to anyone, no one's seeing like the opportunity here. I mean, I would posit, if it's a good enough opportunity and you've got the vision for it, maybe getting fired isn't the worst thing in the world.
Talk about hacking luck, right? Because I think it often isn't, even if maybe in the moment that might not feel good. And by the way, most people don't get fired for taking risks. This little side whisper for the audience.
Right. And I love that. And as much as I come from the world of entrepreneurship, I am, through my work, starting to do more and more on that corporate innovation piece and seeing what can we extrapolate all that great stuff from entrepreneurship and these huge successes where these tech startups have gone on to become these unicorns and overtake these other enterprises. Like what can we learn from this community? And I think the risk taking, if I were to boil it down to just a handful of things for the corporates, the innovation side of things, it is the risk taking is definitely one of those. To your point, seek forgiveness, not permission. Like you'll rarely get fired, but moving fast as well. Like moving fast, test things. Like you can apply those lean startup principles even to a larger organization.
Look, like I am utterly convinced that the problems that face entrepreneurs building a startup are identical to the problems that face corporate employees and executives thinking about innovation and change. And in fact, the work is almost the same, right? The discovery you have to do, the rapid learning, the risk-taking, the area of work, it is all the same. The only thing that's different is that the stakeholders you have to bring along are a little bit different, but there's still stakeholders you have to bring along. And the incentive structure around you is different, and you have to think about it, but it's there. And I love this. Like in a corporate environment, if you have vision and you have accountability, you're going to be able to be proactive and you're going to be able to move really quickly.
Right, exactly.